All right, that was the wrong intro.
Yeah, but
That's what showed up on my screen.
oh, that's okay. Yeah,
That's for the other show that Dwight runs. All right, whatever.
correct
I don't know
line,
if
I
that
guess.
was unintentional or what the heck it was or
Oh, that's
something.
all right.
So anybody out there that was looking for the usual hello doctors, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Hello,
Anyway,
doctors. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Politics in the Political Architect Show. I am Don Irvine, and I'm joined by David Shepard tonight, and
Hello.
Dwight, our emperor or whatever, our eminence Greece. He is off in Georgia. I'm not sure what he's doing, but we wish him well while we take the helm tonight and hopefully don't destroy the show in the meantime.
Yes.
Anyway, how you doing, Dave?
I do good. Cold here. I know I always complain about the cold, but it's pretty bad last 2 nights. So I
Yeah.
guess this is normal for December because we're now in December, but I don't really like it. I really
I'm
don't.
I'm
Never got
I'm
used to cold.
I'm
Never
I'm
got used to the cold weather.
I'm with you. Basically, it's look. As I've gotten older, I hate it even more so. It's like,
Yeah.
I remember, it was fun when I was a kid, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of like you get the snow, you get the snow days, you get to play in the snow and stuff like that. When you become an adult, you actually have to start taking care of things. If you got a house and a driveway, you got to shovel the snow and get all this stuff. But like my wife and I were out shopping today, which we kind of wanted to do some things, but get out of the house, and I'm like, oh, this wind is still too much. I was hoping from yesterday the wind would die down, but it was still just way windy out here where we are, and that just makes it even colder than it was. Sunshine isn't bad, it helps a little bit, but that wind,
Yeah. It's
you know,
mostly the wind.
yeah, that wind will cut the temperature down, make it feel like at least 10 degrees colder, and it's like, oh, that's not pleasant at all. But
For
yeah,
me, yeah, for me, the only thing when I grew up that I liked about the winter was that the the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue came out in February, so that was the only good thing about winter, really, I think. But and sledding, but no, doing good. I was in your neck of the woods yesterday in Maryland, speaking to the Riderwood community there about the election. So they had me speak to their Republican group there, and it was a great group of people. And the mood was very good because I had spoken to them like 6 months earlier, and we were nervous about the election. But then yesterday, everyone was so happy, and for them, they're the Republican wing, sort of the community, and they could feel it where most of their neighbors were not happy with the
yeah.
election, but they're very happy. So
Well,
um,
I mean, that happens at Leisure World too. I mean, there was
yeah,
I don't know how many Republicans are still left over at Leisure World. It was always kind of a smallish group, as I
yeah,
recall, but
yeah,
they were a good group, but they were way outnumbered when you're in Montgomery County. Is the
yeah.
Riderwood, is that the one? Is that the one that's kind of like Laurel Beltsville area, whatever?
Yeah, yes.
Right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think the
Yeah,
best way to describe it, but yeah,
off of Briggs Cheney area and those
yeah.
kind of right. Yes, yeah. We actually had friends of ours that lived there for a little while.
Oh, okay,
So
good, good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
seemed like a nice place.
But that's PG County over there. 90% registration Democrat in PG
Yeah,
County, right?
yeah,
So it's probably it may not be quite as lopsided in Riderwood because Riderwood is a different kind of community rather than the rest of PG County per
yeah,
se, but it's probably still pretty heavily Democrat, I guess.
yeah. And of course, PG County is also Brooks, now the new senator from Maryland. So that was disappointing, Hogan losing. But I must say, I wasn't all that surprised because I figured in in a presidential year where obviously the Democrats are going to carry Maryland, you would think that it's tough for anyone on the ticket, any Republican, I would think, to win.
Yeah, that was gonna be right. You're right. I think that was gonna be difficult for Hogan because people generally vote the party line, right? They just vote a straight ticket. They
Yeah,
don't do as much ticket splitting in Maryland. If this had been if Hogan had run in the off year, and I'm kind of that different. I think that would have been things would have been a little bit different for him. He would have stood a better chance because that also doesn't drive as many voters, Democrat voters, to go and vote for Harris or whatever the top of the nominee.
Yeah.
With Hogan's, just kind of disassociating himself from Trump, that also plays a factor too. If once again, if you're in a non-presidential year, I think he does better. Hogan was a solid candidate. I mean,
Yeah.
my own podcast, that I do usually every week for Accuracy in Academia. My counterpart lives out in Virginia, and he's originally from Louisiana, and he's a pretty good conservative. He's probably way more hardcore than I am, and maybe even more right wing conspiracy type than I am. And that's thing because I really try to stay away from that. But yeah, he actually didn't want Hogan to win. He didn't think Hogan deserved it. But I take the picture of like, look, Stance, they need votes. Hogan been elected. Sure, he may not vote with Republicans 100% of the time, but he's probably good for 70%, maybe higher. They're going to be some he's going to go against, but that's more votes for the Republicans than also Brooks will ever give, right?
Oh yeah. Plus, for the leadership, for the majority leader, he'd be there for. And keep in mind, at the time, we thought we wouldn't. It was close whether we take the Senate or not. So we probably need Hogan. But I guess the bigger disappointment would be Neil Parrott losing that one. That was very close. I guess that's recount territory. But I thought maybe Parrott would have a shot there. I thought he had a good shot. So that's a loss.
Yeah, I kind of went back and looked at some of the last few elections where Neil has run, and he is doing better in every race that he runs. The gap is closing. I mean, theoretically, if this pattern continued, he could probably get over the top. Now, if he, if all things stay the same and he wants to run again and try to beat Delaney because it was so close, it might happen once again. Midterm election, no president at the top, though. The problem could potentially be, what will the Republicans do in this Congress, and what will the mood be in 2 years from now? But if the Republicans do a good job, and Neil can find a good message, then I think that seat is reasonably in play in 2 years still. It's not the Democrats do not have an absolute lock on it, and I think actually I think based on the election results, the last few elections, that 6th district, it's getting tighter overall. So it's something more hopeful. The 8th district, where I am currently, district into, that's a lost cause.
Yeah. The 8th I'm in here in Virginia's a lost cause too. But so with Maryland 6, what makes it bad? If it's Western Maryland, that's pretty good. But what does it get a lot of Montgomery County in there? That's the problem. Okay.
Yeah. So that was, that was this was one of those things that happened, about a decade ago or so, when they did, a little more than that, when they redistricted things, and the Democrats thought, okay, we've got to get rid of Roscoe Bartlett because he just has a slam dunk election every year because he's basically got all of Western Maryland. So they shifted things around and they threw in part of Montgomery County in there. Roscoe was getting older anyway, but Roscoe didn't know anyone in Montgomery County, basically. I still remember that first election, that first year. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but he came to Montgomery County for the Labor Day parade in Gaithersburg that we were in, as the Republican Party was in. We've never seen Roscoe Bartlett because he never had to represent the area before. He had no name recognition in Montgomery County, So this is part of politics, right? I mean, you win the election, you control who gets to do the redistricting. So that's not unfair on that basis. So the Democrats control the state legislature, the governor, even if it's a Republican, only has so much power to to kind of make any changes to that because the
Yeah.
legislature can still go back and change it, I guess. So it makes for a pretty tough thing there that the Democrats continue to tighten their grip, in Maryland. Therefore, that's why we only have Andy Harris, there,
Mm,
right? Montgomery County, where I live, no Republicans elected to anything. It hasn't been for a number of years. So
yeah.
it's we're in a vast wasteland, and it's really hard for the Republican Party here to recruit people to run because the odds are so stacked against them. I do appreciate every single person who has run for office on the county level or on the state level
Yeah.
because this is a very hard task to do so when you're representing Montgomery County. But you, on the other hand, you cannot just give the Democrats the seat.
Yeah.
So because here it's what, it's three. Is it two? I don't know. Is it? I think it's three House members to every one senator for the state house or something like that. So
Mm,
you've got to find these candidates. But if you don't find enough candidates and the Democrats run unopposed, I mean that's a travesty. That should not happen. And it probably runs the same thing for the other side. It's like, why give up seats? Throw somebody up there and make them spend some money, expend
that's
some
right.
money, and do something along those
Yeah,
lines.
stretch them. But anyway, so I was sorry about in the case of the Neil Parrott loss. Hogan, I don't know what he'll do next. I guess he retired from politics, I guess. But
Well, I mean, Hogan
so,
Hogan is smart. The thing is that when he ran for governor, you know, he had planned that a long time in advance. He had built
yeah,
this organization,
change
and it was
Maryland. Yeah.
right, all nonpartisan. They had a huge group of names and things like that. And
Mm,
so I think he has that. I mean, he's 8 years as governor, this race, all the stuff he did with Change Maryland. He did pretty well. I mean, he ran the best Senate campaign. I mean, he got than we've had in years. I mean,
that's
it
right.
has it has, it has just been, you know, it's just been so long since we've had a Republican represent Maryland, in the Senate. It's just ridiculous. Uh,
Um,
and Hogan was a chance. I mean, I hope this was a good opportunity, obviously because an open seat. But I don't see why you just don't go ahead and keep running and keep testing the waters on this and
yeah.
all of that. So who knows? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he could wind up doing some other things as well. Just as you said, he might he could. Who knows what the heck he wants to do next? But he has opportunities. Though there are going to be diehard Republicans that are that probably hate him. But I just think the guy is a very pragmatic, smart politician.
And I
And
guess safe to say Trump's not going to appoint him to anything.
right. He's not going to get in position in the Trump administration. We know that, right? That's for sure. But
Well,
I mean, what you could, I mean, he could run for Congress in some place and put up a fight there and start there and then work his way back
sure.
up again.
Yeah, if he wanted to. His father was a congressman.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, I guess, government positions, we're thinking of Trump's appointment of Hegseth. I don't know. Yesterday, I thought Hegseth would be finished, but I guess he's still hanging on there.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I mean, so I look at Polymarket. I didn't look at it today. Let me see what it goes up here. So Polymarket, which is that betting site, but
Oh yeah, he
it's
liked
not
the poly market. Yeah.
it's not open to U.S. investors, right? You can't be a U.S. citizen to participate in this, and it's all based on
Hmm,
crypto and everything like that. So
hmm.
they run they run so many scenarios in here. Oh my gosh!
Oh wow!
They even have the Romania presidential election, for heaven's sakes, in here. Okay, wait, oh here's
I
one.
just thought
Here's
I didn't know
pay,
it was so limited. I thought anybody could participate.
no,
If you.
but here, oh, this is actually, well, this is interesting. So, yeah, so I had my show couple on Thursday. Yeah, I did yesterday. So at that point in time, uh, Polymarket was showing Hegseth was that it had a 21% chance of being confirmed. Now the betting is showing 40%. So he
Okay.
increased substantially, but he's
Yeah.
still he's I think he's definitely got some problems. I mean, I
Yeah.
do think that he blindsided the administration by not revealing everything, in his background about some potential skeletons or issues that could derail the nomination.
Yeah.
If you can only lose 3 senators,
Yep.
uh, then you've got it's kind of a problem. I mean,
Yeah.
because you've got Murkowski and Collins.
Yeah. You have
That type
two
of
off the bat right. You got two off the bat that would like to side with Dems if they can. You've
we
got
have we have
Ernst.
we have right, and we have 9 female U.S. senators, right,
Yeah.
Republicans.
Oh.
You talk about all these sexual harassment and all these other allegations. You're going to have to do a lot of work to convince the women to vote for you.
Yeah. I
And,
I
and
I wrote a column about this a couple days ago about John Tower. Remember John Tower?
right,
When I first got involved in politics, Tower had the same problems because it was harassment, maybe a little different, but it was a women problem and booze.
right,
And what's striking? John Tower promised because he was having trouble getting confirmed, and so he promised if I become Secretary of Defense, I'll give up drinking. You know what's weird this week? Hegseth, and I don't know if he realized the irony of this, he made the same promise. He said,
right.
if confirmed, I'll give up drinking. And it didn't work for Tower. And I thought, well, I don't think it's going to work for Hegseth. The other advantage or the strength that Tower had is he was a member of the Senate. He was part of the club, and they still rejected him. And so I'm thinking if they could reject him, I think they can reject Hegseth without that much of a problem. But I don't know. Hegseth's still going to fight on, so we'll see. But the other thing is, I'm wondering about RFK Jr. having some potential problems because if you think about it, he's basically a liberal Democrat. So we're talking about putting a liberal Democrat in charge of HHS. And you think that would make enough Republicans kind of queasy. Or do they just go along with Trump on that one?
Yeah. So back to Hegseth again.
Right.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I don't know if he realized about the whole drinking thing, but
Yeah.
I don't see how that moves the needle. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like great. That's great. That's great that you're going to be drinking, but what does that have to really do with you getting confirmed per se, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's not the major concern. We're the sexual harassment issues and paying off that other person, the woman, those are bigger concerns. You know, just his the kind of the moral turpitude. Does he have what it takes? And as you say, rightly so, he's not part of the club. This was definitely a pick out of left field.
Yeah. It's unconventional.
When the U.S. Senate rejected John Tower, they rejected one of their own. That's a pretty shocking thing. It has to be pretty bad, if you are, when you're part of the Senate, this august body as they always talk about, and they would take one of their members, because that's normally almost a guarantee, right? You look at Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
I don't Marco Rubio will probably sail through. Not
Yeah.
everybody likes him, but he's probably going to sail through. He doesn't have the same baggage, but he is part of that club, and he's definitely not going to have the John Tower baggage or anything like that. So yeah, he'll get confirmed, and that'll be that. But yeah, I mean, and RFK Jr. Yeah. I mean, I don't even like this nomination, so
Yeah.
I don't have any problems if it goes down in flames. This is where I wonder about Trump and his advisors and his judgment in
Yeah.
terms of making these cabinet selections, because RFK Jr. to me is an easily a political payback offering, right? This is
Yeah.
you dropped out, you supported me, I'm going to give you this position. I
Yeah.
thought at best he'd be getting some kind of advisory role within HHS, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
That type of thing, and directing that kind of thing. And that way he could still talk about vaccines and the dangers of processed foods and whatever and all that stuff, but he wouldn't have the clout of being a cabinet member.
Yeah,
And
yeah, you're right. That's a lot to give them.
that's
Yeah,
this
it's
is
a
a
lot.
heck that is a heck of a lot to give him. And I do think that Republicans, I hope they do scrutinize him and say, make a good decision. I mean, I think his confirmation hearings will be interesting. You know, there's probably no reason for him really at this point to drop out.
Yeah,
Just go ahead and go through the confirmation hearings and see what happens. But
yeah,
they probably don't look at Hegseth. I think he'd be smart to drop out before the confirmation hearings because
yeah,
accusations are accusations, but once you start getting grilled in a confirmation hearing, I
yeah.
think that's going to be much tougher.
Yeah,
The,
I
sc-
agree.
the scrutiny level is going to be so much higher. Then
Yeah,
they've got Tulsi Gabbard, kind of,
yeah,
what are we doing with her? So his cabinet picks have been kind of a mixed bag at
yeah.
this point.
I always say of Trump that in the whole Trump product, which is a good product, but within this product, you're going to have some of these odd picks that come up. I've never met anyone that. I mean, I think a lot of them. I think he's very smart and all, but sometimes he just makes the darndest picks. And you can go back 4 years ago, or not now, 8 years ago, to you had Rex Tillerson or Sessions, and then he brought in Scaramucci and Omarosa. There's always these odd picks with him, and Chris Ray. And the thing with the Gates thing, I'm convinced that he was just throwing it out there to try to distract the media from maybe the others. I don't think that was ever really serious. But Kennedy again has got it's a lot of power to give him for a guy who's basically a liberal Democrat on all these sorts of issues. Uh, Tulsi, I like Tulsi, but then again, is that the best place for her?
Right.
DNI. I'm not sure about that in terms of her background. And I forgot her name, the lady in Oregon he made labor secretary. Uh,
Oh, Chavez de Romer.
yeah, that is another odd one because apparently the unions like her a lot, including Andy, not was it Andy Stern or one of the big labor guys. So that's another odd one. And I think sometimes the Senate, thank God for the Senate, maybe to put a check on some of this. And that's why I'm glad Gates dropped out. And that's why I hate it when with the talk radio, they're just sort of, if you listen to them today, it's all about advocating for Hegseth. I don't know why do that. Let the process play out, but to be cheerleading for him, and I have nothing against him, but it just seems like there's this great cheerleading and he's Trump's pick, therefore we've got to show loyalty and just browbeat all the senators to vote for him. But I don't think so. I think it deserves some scrutiny. And there may be someone better, like when we got rid of Gates drops out, Pam Bondi's obviously the better choice. Same thing with potentially at defense. There's talk of Ron
Yeah.
DeSantis, maybe. I don't know if you heard that talk.
Yeah, I've heard that talk too. Yeah, I mean the thing about Chavez de Remer is just that because she is very pro labor, and
Yeah,
you're kind of like, I don't understand this pick. But on the other hand, with all the cabinet selections in the end, I guess we have to kind of remember is that they are beholden to Trump.
yeah,
And so with labor secretary, I'm going to be curious uh, if she does get confirmed as to whether or not how much freedom she has to actually be pro labor. This is maybe a little bit of a sop to the labor unions that helped Trump, but maybe not one that's so serious that we're going to say, by the way, we're supporting every pro labor union piece of legislation that may pop up somewhere.
mm,
And everything like that. She may find her if she does get confirmed, she might find herself a little bit handcuffed by what Trump says. No, we're not going to do that. We cannot do that.
yeah.
Uh,
I agree.
because we're talking about just someone who in essence is favoring labor unions over right to work laws, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, uh, and so that's not a good thing. So these he does have these odd picks, uh,
Yeah.
but you kind of wonder, wouldn't it be interesting? don't you wonder was like what goes on in Trump's head, when
Yeah.
when he comes up with these things, and
Yeah.
who the heck is putting these ideas into his head anyway?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
we get these things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he thought that. I mean, Sylvester Raymer, not a well-known congresswoman from Oregon. She lost her reelection race.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe if she doesn't make it through, there's somebody else he's got waiting in the wings. The fact that they seem to have, if some of these people fail, that they're already their names being floated about for potential others to go there says, I don't know how much faith they have in some of these nominations to actually get confirmed to begin with.
Yeah. And the lady probably lost her reelection in part because of her labor positions, and then he appoints her as
Yeah,
Secretary of Labor.
that could very well be. I don't know. I mean, that's you
But
just don't know. So it's kind of an odd thing, and this is going to be an interesting time because yeah, Trump won the election. The vote. I guess there's still some votes being counted in California to finalize though. They've now declared, now we know what the makeup of Congress is, and everything like that. So Trump slipped below the 50% mark,
yeah,
and things like that. But he still received more votes than any Republican presidential candidate in U.S. history,
and
and
he beat her, and he had received more votes than anyone else for president. So
right,
uh,
and Harris still finishes with about 6 to 7 million fewer votes than Biden had before.
yeah, yeah,
So it's you kind of wonder what happened to those Democrats, that voted before. Now, part of that may be that the pandemic was kind of unique, right?
yeah,
The voting in 2020, uh, we you people there was so much mail-in voting and things like that. Now there was a lot more. There was a lot of voters returning back to the polls. Harris as a candidate, not that great. You
yeah,
Joe Biden wasn't a great candidate, in 2020, but he never was really on the trail, right? He was just in his basement.
yeah. That's true.
So we
She
nobody
adopted the same
really
strategy.
knew who Joe Biden was.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, and you see her either that or they stuffed the ballot box by 6 million. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, and, when the elections are over with and they get certified, I mean, you can do a lot of finger pointing and things like that, and
Yeah.
we could talk to her blue in the face. But I think you have to, for the good of the country and everything like that, you kind of have to move on and say, okay, look, the votes have been certified. They couldn't find any, just widespread evidence that any of the stuff would happen that would have changed the nature of the race. Now, there are deep, dark conspiratory people like my co-host, who continues to this day to talk about the irregularities. I'm like, look,
Mm.
it's over with, it's done.
Yeah.
We've now had another presidential election, and guess what? Trump wins all these states that he lost the last time around.
Yeah.
So that should silence a lot of these critics in that regard.
Well,
Uh, so, I don't want to go down that path. I mean, our voting system isn't 100% foolproof,
yeah.
but you're talking 150 plus million people that have cast their votes for president. That's a lot
Yeah.
of people. But
No, yeah.
and you have at all the states are controlling the voting in those states. So you have 50 different ways of sets of rules in essence, right? They all have different sets of rules about when you can vote, how you can vote, and how the votes are counted and all this kind of stuff. And as a result of that, you get California, which takes almost a month
Yeah.
to count the votes so we know what the makeup of Congress is. It's like
Crazy.
that is a huge travesty. That is just a shameful stain for us. How do you in the United States of America, how do you have a state that cannot count the votes,
Yeah.
within just a few days?
Yeah.
Why does it take a month?
It stuns me that on election night, most of the districts can do it in one night. But some it'll take them a month. It's just like a wide range here. We can do this.
Yeah,
We can do this in
and that
night.
and right, and it makes you wonder. And I mean, I don't blame the Republicans who lost their seats to the Democrats who saw their seats flip, like Michelle Steele. She was in the lead, and then as more of us, kept being counted, and then she eventually lost her reelection bid. And I don't know, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania had those things about they could accept the ballots even if they weren't postmarked properly and stuff like that, right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, they can impose their own rules, but you got to count the legitimate votes, and the votes ought to be counted within a reasonable amount of time. And a month is not a reasonable amount of time to count votes. I don't, Gavin Newsom, he wants to be president, but please tell me, I mean, you're running a state that takes a month to count votes, and we've been doing this every election for the last several elections. I don't even know how far back it goes, but I know it goes back for several elections, and it's horrible because the rest of us, are like, as close as these races are, Congress hangs in the balance, right?
Yeah.
You really don't know, you're not quite sure what the final makeup is. We're in December. I mean, Congress is going to get sworn in at the beginning of January, in about 30 days. It's like, this is crazy. I mean, they've already, they've already had the, they caucus so they can go earlier, after the election to go and vote for their leadership. But if you don't know if you're going to be in the next Congress, what's the deal there? I mean, it's like you have to count the votes so they can get some of this business done.
Yeah, and you know what? This also tells you that ranked choice voting on a national scale would be a bad idea because that would go on and on forever. And also, what happens if you just had a national popular vote? You'd have a real problem in terms of counting. Now you just have a few problem states, then you can count theirs. But imagine if it was the whole nation. We got to recount all these again. So then you'd have a real problem. So
Yeah, look, I mean, Alaska thought they were being smart when they did that ranked choice voting,
yeah,
and all it had done is just bring a lot of confusion, and
yeah,
and the Republicans took it on the chin for the most part ever
yeah,
since they did that. The
yeah.
Republicans were in good shape in Alaska until ranked choice voting came in.
Yeah, I agree.
And then,
Yeah, that's
and then that came in, and that allowed, what's her name, Polotolo. She won a couple of times.
yeah,
It would not have happened if it wasn't for ranked choice voting. You
yeah.
know,
Okay, yeah.
and California. I mean, also California looking like Louisiana with the kind of that jungle primary type of thing like that. So you've got the top two finishers race, run against each other. So sometimes they can be Democrats, sometimes they can be Republicans. Though in California, the chances that two Republicans would finish 1-2 is pretty slim.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just nuts. I mean, the system that I grew up in said a Republican runs against a Democrat, or you know, if there was by some miracle an independent actually, finished, actually won enough votes to, to get into this whole thing or whatever. But they, but basically it's Republican versus Democrat. It's not Republican versus Republican or Democrat versus Democrat, and then having 16 people running effectively competing, and if you don't get a majority, then you've got to have like a runoff and all this stuff. It's like, this costs him more. This costs the taxpayer more money. Can you not just do this so that it's a lot more efficient if you just don't do that stuff? But
Yeah, well, it's good. It's good on the national level. We don't have a runoff. All right, Trump and Kamala running again in
yeah,
the runoff.
yeah,
So it's good you don't do that again.
that's just, yeah. That whole thing is just kind of insane to me. So, but I'm glad this is past us. Hopefully for most of us, there are probably still some people who are not happy. But hey,
Well, the other thing is the House margin is so small, and then Trump had to. This goes into his picks or his thinking, and he's taken out a number of members of Congress, which I guess will have special elections then for them. But I mean, I don't mind Gates going, but you've lost Gates. But we should be able to pick up the seat. Uh, uh, the other lady from New York, forget her
Stefanik,
name.
at least Stefanik.
Yeah, Lisa. so she's leaving, and I think the guy from Florida, Waltz. So the problem with that is you may say, well, they come from good red districts, it's safe. But I think anytime you have an election, it's still a roll of the dice. So I think he should have left more of a cushion. And the thing is, he can always get people from outside of Congress to run agencies or for appointments. He doesn't need members of Congress. So um, anyway, that's another thing that I
Right.
hope
No,
doesn't come back.
I agree with that. Look, I mean, I think you have to be strategic in all of this. Is like you have to look at the fact that he knew that the Republicans were going to control Congress if it was going to be a razor thin margin. And
Yeah.
the last thing you really want to do is remove people from their seats, even if you consider them to be safe seats, because in a special election, as you said, that can become a wild card situation, and you
Yeah.
could even what was a Republican safe seat could be flipped. You know,
Yep.
and I like in New York, I
Mhm.
think that is just there's no guarantee, particularly in New York. I think the Florida seats are fine. Now also remember with Gates, the funny thing with him is that he resigned from this Congress, right?
All
And
right.
he won re-election to the next Congress.
Right.
Now I think he said he's not going to take the seat in the next Congress, but until January 4th or whatever rolls around, until I see them, there take everybody standing there taking the oath, I'll believe it when I see it, just to be sure that he's going. Like, will I miss Matt Gaetz from Congress? Absolutely not.
Mhm.
I think he's done a lot of damage in Congress and created a lot of problems for Republicans where we didn't need to have them. So
Mhm.
I would just say goodbye. And so his name has been floated for what, general counsel or something like that, I think,
Well,
for the
originally
president.
Attorney General, but are they thinking of something else for him? I didn't know.
Yeah. No, they thought no, they had floated his name for White House general counsel.
Mhm.
So you know, let I guess I'm like, look, if that's probably something that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it's better than Attorney General.
Yeah.
In terms of he can probably do less damage there
Right. Yeah.
if
Probably.
that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
So if that's what he really wants to do, fine. I'm not I mean, who am I to fight that anyway? But
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes with all of that. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, when we're just I mean, we've just gone past a month past the election, and we're now what's today, the 6th, so we're about 45 days away from the inauguration. So that ought to be quite an event coming up.
You
Um,
it's amazing. You mentioned we're 45 days away, I guess, from the inauguration, but it's almost like Trump's president now. You got Trudeau coming down to visit him. He's talking to the president of Mexico. He's going to be in Macron invited him to Notre Dame, I guess, for the opening. Um, so they're already starting to deal with him. I think it's amazing. I haven't seen anything like this. And Biden's off in Africa after he pardoned his son. They gave him a blanket pardon for 10 years. No matter whatever you did, we're not prosecuting you. And I think that's. Have you ever heard of? I didn't know you could even have such a pardon. It's like the James Bond license to kill. You're basically saying you can do anything for that period of time. That's just
yeah, I mean, you and I mean, we're old enough. We've seen lots of presidential pardons because that is something they do. Usually on their way out of office, they
yeah,
issue pardons, and
yeah,
there's usually a fairly long list, and the people are not the best people in the world, but they're getting pardoned for whatever, anywhere from Mark Rich now to Hunter Biden. And so
yeah.
you see all these kinds of things that happen. But what makes this kind of unique is just that he had Joe Biden had said that he was not going to do this. He was
Yeah,
pretty he was pretty emphatic about doing this.
right.
Uh,
Yeah,
it came days before Hunter was supposed to be sentenced,
yeah,
right? It
yeah,
comes right up against that. And, a lot of these pardons, I mean, usually are for past offenses. I mean, Trump pardoned Jared Kushner's dad, but
Mhm.
he'd already paid a penalty for tax evasion or whatever it was. So it wasn't like he wasn't on trial. This was a prior offense, and this is
Yeah.
usually what happens. It's usually for things that have happened in the past, and you've been Hunter hadn't even been sentenced yet, and he's saying, okay, we're going to take this 10-year period and we're just going to absolve him of anything, not just
Yeah.
that stuff, but anything else that may get caught up in the whole stuff like that, and but what's funny is to watch the liberals trying to justify this, right? It,
Yeah.
there's a clip, I don't know if you saw this. There's a clip of Joy Reid from 2020 railing about Trump's pardon of Kushner's dad,
Mhm.
right? And then there's the 2024 clip of like, it's perfectly fine for him to pardon Hunter Biden.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's railing about, this is part of the family, right? Kushner's part of the family. Trump's doing this, and now
Yeah.
Biden does, a blood relative, right? I mean, his own son, flesh and
Yeah.
blood, and does
Yeah.
this, and it's just like, yeah, well, this. Look, I mean, the Washington Post, and when the Washington Post comes up with an editorial, I mean, that says that basically criticizes Biden for doing this, partially because he says he's giving Trump cover for the future, which is true in
Yeah.
that sense, right? But it makes the actions of the Washington Post in the last few months make me wonder about the Washington Post, right? They didn't endorse a presidential candidate, got a lot of people in the newsroom upset. You know, Jeff Bezos made some complimentary remarks about Donald Trump, and now you have this editorial that says, this pardon not a good look, not good at all,
Mhm.
and things like this, and a lot of liberals. I mean, Chuck Schumer's like, I guess somebody tried to interview him. He says on this, like, I got nothing for you. It's like they
Okay.
don't know. Some liberals don't even know what to say. They're trying. They were caught off guard, and they're like, what? He did what? How are we supposed to defend this?
And that goes
You know,
back to what you said. He kept saying, I'm not going to pardon him. And then he had his staffers say, we're not going to pardon him. And the problem with that is it's hard then to say, well, any father would do that for their own kid if they had the power. But the fact is that he was saying all along he wasn't going to do it. And then so how now do you come up with that argument? Well, I'm just doing what anyone else would do. So he shouldn't have said anything. He shouldn't have ruled it out. He ruled it out back in the days because he was thinking he was going to run for president against Trump. And he wanted to have the juxtaposition of Trump's abusing the power and I'm not. So once it's over, well, now he can pardon Hunter. But he shouldn't have said anything. He shouldn't have ruled it out. That's the problem because he gets caught in the lie. And the second thing is, I don't think most parents would give a blanket pardon to their kid. If the kid did something and they had the power to commute a sentence or keep him out of jail, yeah, I guess you do that. But I don't think most parents would say, for 10 years, if the Sonny boy broke the law, he can't be prosecuted. I don't think any parent would do that. So that I think is as extreme as I can think of. They say the only pardon in history that was quite as broad was Ford's pardon of Nixon. Apparently, in that pardon, it basically said any sort of crimes, sort of when he was in regarding Watergate and whatever. But it was pretty broad and expansive. So,
yeah. I mean,
you know,
with this, it's like, I mean, there may be some things we don't know about, but now he's untouchable for that 10-year period.
yeah, that's
Right?
ridiculous. Yeah, yeah.
What
I
else
think
don't
it's
we know? What else don't we know about Hunter? Well, now it doesn't really matter because Joe Biden has just said, you can't touch him. He's been exonerated for all of this stuff.
yeah, but that's very fitting because I think he coddled Hunter all his life and always tried to cover up for him all his life, and he does it this time too. But you wonder if he might pardon his brother Jim because he and Hunter were in the same business, really. Uh, and if there's anybody else he might consider pardoning, it's funny. I heard a list of people that he's considering possible pardons for, and I don't know that they've committed any crimes. It's just the concern is maybe Trump will get Dr. Fauci on something or Liz Cheney on something. But it just seems to me that if you think of pardoning someone who hasn't been charged with anything, it's almost like you're telegraphing that you think they might have broken the law or something. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah, that is weird. I mean, there's definitely been a lot of reports about, you know, Trump is going to go after his enemies and kind of thing like this. This is
Yeah,
going to be very, very, vengeful kind of a thing like that on the one hand. On the other hand, yeah, I mean, if there's no crime to pardon them from,
yeah,
this is weird. It is
yeah,
really weird.
yeah. And it'll look bad once you do that. Once you do that.
Yeah, Craig.
Well, it's interesting when I watch the mainstream media, especially Jonathan Karl. He keeps talking. He uses the word retribution, Trump retribution, retribution. And I don't know what that's based on. I mean, Trump has said he's not out for retribution. He's just trying to clean up the FBI and things like that. So it just seems sort of like bias or a false narrative to keep talking about. Oh, Trump's gonna go after his political enemies, and I don't know what that's real. I don't think there's much to base that on.
Look, I think Trump he's become very effective without having to really he doesn't have to carry through on these kind of things. I mean,
Yeah,
just the fact that this stuff is out there has scared the liberals,
yeah,
scared the
yeah,
establishment to
yeah,
thinking that, oh my gosh, we got to do this, right? And so they move. I mean, you had mentioned Trudeau and basically Claudia Sheinbaum from Mexico.
yeah,
Trump talks about tariffs on Mexico, tariffs in Canada,
yeah.
and ties them to immigration issues and things like that. So what happens? Trudeau and Scheinbaum, who are no fans of Donald Trump, now want to have conversations with Donald Trump, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You talk about Macron. I mean, Trump's relationship, with a lot of world leaders was kind of because Trump had campaigned and had done things on an America First basis and had really upended foreign relations and kind of how diplomacy was handled, and
Mhm,
just said, "This is how we're going to do things." I'm taking care of America's interests first, and
mhm,
and so that obviously rubbed the Angela Merkel's and all these people the wrong way. But guess what, folks? That kind of diplomacy was the right way to do things. It kept Putin in check. It kept Kim Jong Un in check. We had things were relatively stable around the world because nobody really wanted to mess with Donald Trump because he was practicing a new type of diplomacy. Joe Biden gets elected, things go back to the way they had been before, and then we have all these issues that have cropped up, during the Biden presidency, right? We get Ukraine, Russia invading Ukraine, you know, we have just you want to talk about it, you can name it. I mean, the Israel Hamas thing. I mean, I don't think I think that's another thing, where the Biden administration has been weak. They have
mhm,
not been as strong on a lot of these issues as they should have been, and I
mhm,
think it affects them. They have failed on foreign policy. Uh, and North Korea. Yeah, I know North Korea. Trump would do some funny things with North Korea, but they basically kind of just stay doing what they're doing. Well, so what's North Korea doing now? They're sending troops, to Ukraine, so
yeah,
that Russia can bruise them against Ukraine, right? And things like this. So there's all these different things that are going on. I think you see China has picked up its aggression overall. They've clamped down on freedom. Hong
yeah,
Kong, Hong Kong is not Hong Kong anymore. It's a complete
mhm.
mess. I
It's sad,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, which is sad because I've been in Hong Kong before, and I thought it was a great city. But when I read stories about what's happened there and how businesses have fled because China's just basically taken that over, and forget about capitalism and forget about freedom of speech. It doesn't exist. It's
Yeah.
going away.
It is sad that Xi has turned out so bad. I remember we were both in Washington at the time with MFN, most favored nation trade status, that was going to be given to China. It was a big controversy. And we had this debate would it liberalize them and open them up? And it's sort of yes and sort of no. It helped them get rich, but let's face it, the communists it's still a one-party state. It's still a dictatorial, one-party communist state, a repressive state. And so after all these years of the prosperity, the politics of it really hasn't changed. It's
Right.
still, yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's been interesting. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the domestic side here too, but well, since we last were on the air too, we've also had some other things that have been cropping up here at the end of the Biden administration. We have the French government has fallen, the German government has fallen,
Yeah.
and South Korea has had this weird declaration of martial law, and then the lifting of martial law, and everything like this. And there's some other world problems that are coming up there. I don't know. I mean, part of my thing too is just that when you have France and Germany, even Israel, I mean, they're fragile governments because they are on this parliamentary system. They were all these governments were cobbling together coalitions to govern, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one party did not get enough votes to be able to basically say, I'm going to form a government. They fell short, so they needed help from someone else. So in France, you're working with Marine Le Pen and the leftists.
Mm-hmm.
This was bound to fail at some point in time. Keir Starmer and the Labor Party may have won, a record victory, in the election, but it doesn't mean that they will stay that way, because they impose taxes. If they can't control inflation, the Tories have a chance, to maybe make some kind of comeback and make some inroads again at some point in time, and things like that. So I think we have got a great system of government here where at least our government maintains it's reasonably stable. We know when our elections are. We know this. If you're overseas, if you're in these other countries, you're never sure. I mean, they may have Macron's got a 7-year term. He wants to serve it out, but there could be pressure on him to call elections early, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want that's stuff that you just that makes for some unease, is when that kind of stuff happens in my mind. So
Yeah.
so
I
I
guess
think we're in pretty good shape overall.
Yeah, probably blessed not having a parliamentary system. A lot of times people, I think, long for that. Some people seem to think that would be better or pine for that. I don't think so. I have my doubts.
I mean, I think it's interesting to watch the parliamentary system, but
Yeah.
when you do watch it, you say, this is hard. I mean, you know, look, Israel's shown just how hard it is, because they have had the hardest time over the last several years of putting together a government. I mean, they've had multiple elections, Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, and trying to put this together. Netanyahu has got it together right now, but it's very frail, and I think he stays in power right now because he's really trying to take a tough stance against Hamas, but without that war going on, I'm not sure that he'd stay in office now, because it would probably collapse yet again, and they'd probably go through another election and maybe another election. Israel seems to be having a lot of trouble, keeping it together, and Netanyahu doesn't have enough votes on his side to pull everything together overall and just have a majority government and say, this is our government, this is what we're doing. So it's just kind of crazy how this has all gone. But I'll be curious to see how Trump handles Israel going forward, hopefully backing Netanyahu. I mean, I think Netanyahu needs to be tough, and Hamas has got, they have no interest in the ceasefire, 2-state solution. They want Israel gone. That's all it is.
Yeah, I agree.
That's all it really is in the long run.
Well,
All right.
I think. Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think the French system is the most complicated. I have to study that, because you've got a parliament, but then you've got the president. The president's elected and then appoints the prime minister, and then the prime minister deals with I don't know. It just seems that's a funny one.
Well, the other thing about the parliamentary system, like in Great Britain and these things, and you see, I mean, I think this happens virtually in most countries, is that they have these by-elections, right? So they have all these other things that go on in between. So you have a parliament, but then you have these by-elections, and then sometimes they can flip, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden that causes a lot of turmoil. It's like, uh-oh, the Tories lost a by-election in this area,
Yeah.
and that may spell doom for them. And I have never quite understood that whole by-election thing, but
Mm.
it just seems to have a tremendous influence about this, and then also brings more instability to the whole parliament thing, because it seems like that's happening. You've got all these other, you're holding your coalition together. Yeah, in France you've got a president, you've got a prime minister, and you've got the parliament, and you're like, okay, what is going on here? I mean, at least in Great Britain, it's like, okay, all right, you've got a king, but the king is ceremonial, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we know that the power of running the government really is the prime minister,
Yeah.
and the parliament, right? So, but I don't know. I mean,
But in
it,
but in France, the president has power, so it's
right,
not like the same thing.
right, exactly, right, yeah. I think most countries, it's the prime minister that is controlling things. That's where you look.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right. The prime minister's the head of government,
right.
and the king's the head of state. But in this case, in France, it'd be the president would be both the head of state and I guess the head of government. So
Yeah. So, and I think, I think in France, I don't think they've seen anything like this since, what was it? It's been 40, 50 years or something like that since they had a government collapse. I mean, it goes back to Charles de Gaulle's time or something like that. I mean,
yeah, maybe
they
so.
they- they've been relatively stable in terms of, at least they've been able to keep it together.
That reminds me. You mentioned prime minister in that position of Trump's apparent joke to Trudeau about hey, you could change titles. You could become governor of the 51st state. That was funny. That was a dig that he would take. But and the other thing about the primary system, at least in Canada, is they refer to it as a riding. Your district's a riding. And by-elections, I always thought were like midterm elections. Maybe I'm wrong. I always thought the
I think
by-elections
I think that's what they are.
or a
But
special election. Excuse me. I always thought of it like a special election.
okay, yeah,
But
yeah, because it's not. I haven't studied enough to go back and say exactly what it is, because some by-elections seem to be like one seat, right? So that seems to be
yeah,
sound like more of a special election. Sometimes it seems to be more, but
yeah,
it's amazing how you lose a by-election, and it's just that one seat, and all of a sudden everything changes. You know,
yeah,
it sets a signal about what's going to happen in other potential by-elections, and what happens, how it relates back to the parliament and the prime minister. And I'm like,
yeah,
wow, okay, that's just, I mean, we have special elections, but I don't think you can read too much into special elections, because there's so many other factors that go in on that, that type of thing. And it can be the shortness of time in terms of when the person leaves office to the time they have a special election. You have candidates who have just a couple of months to run.
yeah,
You've got some unpopularity by, this is like a vote. We don't like the president, so we're going to vote for the Democrat this time, or the Republican this time, or whatever. But
mm,
traditionally, then they flip a seat, but then the seat gets flipped back, because it's happened in Texas on some of those border things. There was a big deal made of some of those people who'd won long held Democrat seats
like
in a
Myra
special
Flores,
election.
I remember.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And then when the election came around, lost.
yeah, that's
But
true. Although still did quite well in Texas this time with the Hispanic vote. You
yeah,
know, Trump's dig at alleged little joking with Trudeau reminds me of the best and I like Canada, but the best anti-Canada joke I ever heard came from, of all people, Al Capone. It wasn't a joke. He was being grilled by the police about his connections, and he had connections in Canada. He was doing Canada. And so they were grilling Capone. They said, "We know about your Canadian connections. We know about your Canadian connections. Come clean." And Capone said, "Canada? I don't even know what street that's on." So I just thought that was so beautiful. I just thought that was so beautiful. I don't even know what street that's on. So,
no,
um,
that's funny. All
Yeah.
right. I think we have hit the 1 hour mark, so I think we're now into official overtime. So let's
Okay.
wrap it up with final thoughts.
Well, final thought. Looking forward to the change of administration. Looking forward to getting past Christmas, mostly because I don't like Christmas music. So hopefully that'll be ending soon. I am
Why, you don't like
happy.
you don't want to hear that Mariah Carey thing over and over and over again?
Oh God, I hate that. It's so maudlin, all that stuff. And then the final thing is, I am happy about one thing. The McRib is back. The McRib at McDonald's. It's addictive. I had one. I don't know if they put crack in it or what, but or fentanyl. It's addictive. But otherwise, that's about it for me. I'm just trying to stay warm.
All right. Yeah, okay. So McRib. This is interesting because I always see social media posts about this, and I'm like, I think in my lifetime I've had one McRib.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your
And every
body
time
thinks you.
every time it comes back, I keep thinking like, I probably should go out and get a McRib, and then I don't do it, and the next thing I know, it's off the menu again.
Oh
So,
yeah.
because McDonald's is smart, right? They pull it
Yeah.
off the menu, and
Yeah.
then they bring it back, and
Yeah.
so I think that that pent up demand goes like people go crazy, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and everything like that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
I give them credit. Now Dwight would probably say like forget the McRib, Shamrock Shake.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, I want the Shamrock Shake year round. It's like,
But I remember the glory days with the Shamrock Shake is it wasn't in a fancy cup or whipped cream, none of that. It was the usual cup, and they just pour it right in. So it was very basic.
I did see something though. I think that the new hot thing. I shouldn't say quite hot thing, but the what's gone crazy has been a hot chocolate McFlurry at
Mm.
McDonald's. I heard
Mm, I haven't tried it.
50 days and counting. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's think about that, Craig. So March 17th is St. Patrick's Day, and it comes out earlier than that. So how far away are we from St. So we're what? We're probably over 70 days away from 70. We're what? We're at like 100, maybe 100 days away, or give or take from that. I
Mm,
50. I think that's still too much. I think they come up with the Shamrock Shake. Dwight will know 2 weeks, 3 weeks beforehand. So maybe late February, early March. So
okay.
it's probably more like 60 plus, I think, but I don't know. Um,
Mm,
I keep saying that I ought to go back to my gym when the little juice bar is open because they have a Shamrock protein smoothie. And it's
oh,
like I'm kind of curious about what that is, but I'm also not crazy. I'm not really crazy about the idea of paying $8 for a smoothie either.
yeah, I
So
agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's good. Christmas music, yeah, yeah. I don't know if I like it as much as I used to, but
Yeah.
um, I don't really listen to it as much as I used to for the in general. So maybe that's all part of my aging process. I do not know.
You know,
Um,
they don't play. By the way, speaking of Christmas music, the one song that they don't play anymore that I heard as a kid, and you did too, Grandma Got Run Over by a
I was
Reindeer.
just going to say that.
Yeah, they don't play that anymore. I don't hear it anymore. I guess because
Yeah,
it's too brutal.
yeah, yeah. It's probably been PC'd out, right?
Yeah, that would be PC'd out. Grandma got run over by a reindeer, but yeah,
Yeah,
jeez. And they still celebrated in the song. They still celebrated Christmas.
yeah,
They still had the family dinner. Grandma just wasn't there. So
yeah. I mean, look, that's a classic. It's just a hilarious song.
yeah,
Um, all right. Well, as I wrap up, my final thoughts will be that I thought it was interesting that Dinesh D'Souza apologized for errors in the 2000 Mules film that he made. They looked at apparently some of the data was wrong
mm-hmm.
in there and things like that. Once again, 2000 Mules was pretty conspiratorial,
Yeah,
voter fraud type of movie. I'm glad that he came clean on this. I have a hard time with these people that just are so diehard with all of this. I think you've got to, we are better than this overall, and that and we can't. I don't know. I just go back. I go back to the whole time of the Gore Lieberman time, and there were T-shirts that were in bumper stickers, sore loserman and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
this and look, you lose the race, you lose an election, you lose an election, and got to do it, and yet we've seen more of this. I mean, Trump was guilty of it, Hillary Clinton has been guilty of it,
mm,
Stacey Abrams has been guilty of it. There's numerous politicians that wouldn't immediately concede, right?
yeah,
Uh, and or would talk about voter fraud or whatever. And I think you've got to get past that. So I find it fun, I always find it funny, like with with a Stephanie, with Abrams, with her, just that she she wants to talk about these disenfranchisement and stuff like that. But I mean, they had in Georgia, they had record votes during the time that she was running for governor. I mean,
yeah,
there's there was no fraud there, and there was no they had no proof whatsoever. But then she tries to make a whole career out of this whole thing. So
yeah.
anyway, for that, also I think just on a couple of sports things to end too here. So last week was a strange week in college football because it was rivalry week, and the teams that won when they beat their rivals on their home. So they were trying to plant the flag
Mm,
on at midfield. And the
mm,
big dust up really was the Michigan Ohio State game. Michigan has now beaten Ohio State four straight times, and that left a huge brawl. And the state
yeah,
got fined $100,000 for this thing.
wow,
It's like, okay, look, can you just play football? I mean,
yeah,
I'm already having a hard time with this name, image, and likeness, and the fact that you guys are basically pro athletes now anyway because you're getting paid to play football at the college level while going to class theoretically,
yeah,
and now you're brawling about planting a flag. Maybe you should rethink the idea about planting a flag on your opponent's home field when you beat them. Is that
yeah,
really that necessary to do that? So maybe
yeah,
maybe maybe something has to be done about that. Um, and then the great chase for Juan Soto, former Washington National, uh, they think that maybe sometime this weekend, that they'll announce his new contract and whatever team he plays for.
mm,
And this could will it be the Yankees? Will it be the Red Sox, Dodgers, Toronto Blue Jays, New York Mets? Who's gonna shell out in the neighborhood of $600 million over say 15 years for this guy? He is a generational talent, no doubt.
yeah,
And you know, Mike Trout's one of the best players in baseball, or had been, but he's been beset by injuries.
yeah,
Bryce Harper is a great player, but has had a few injuries in his career. Juan Soto, he has been able to avoid injury, and the thing about him is that he's only about 26 years old. So
yeah,
you sign him to a long-term deal. You're basically saying, I'm paying you. I'm going to send you to a 15-year deal. We're just trying to get 10 years out of you.
yeah,
That's the way they do that. So they're not, he's not really expected to play to 41, but if he plays into his mid to late 30s, he'll probably more than pay off for whoever team does it. If the Yankees lose him, they're in trouble because
yeah.
he without him they never would have succeeded as much as they did this last year. But the
Right.
Mets have got big time money, so we'll see with all of that. All right, enough blabbering and everything like that by
Well,
me. Appreciate you joining me tonight, David, and hope Dwight should be back next week. I think I will probably not be here.
uh,
I'm going off to Utah to visit my new grandchild. So
well, good, good.
my my youngest my son, he and his wife just had their first child, so we're going to go spend a few days with them.
Well,
Kind of a quick trip, and then come back.
well, I hope one of your grandchildren keeps the name Reed alive. It's a great family name, Reed Irvine.
So
So,
so yeah, so that okay. So it's interesting, right? I was thinking about that tonight. So we named, we kept Reed Irvine for Spencer, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
he's unfortunately passed on. But
yes,
so actually, what my son is doing, he's he's going he's naming his boy's son's name is Noah Spencer Irvine.
Okay, good. After
So Spencer stays there, but
yeah.
I have a grandson that won't be on the other side. My daughter, so he's Carson Reed Tidwell. So we can't keep Reed Irvine in there,
Okay.
but but they're still a Reed. I mean, they're still being honored in a sense by my children are still saying some our some family names in here are staying alive one way or the other.
Yeah. Because I always used to say the two great Reeds in Virginia in the conservative movement, Reed Larson and Reed Irvine. So the Reeds.
Yeah, Reed Larson was a great old guy.
Yeah, I met Reed once. I worked for Right to Work. I met him.
So, all right, folks, everybody, thanks for joining us. Craig, thanks for your comments. We'll have to get a count from Dwight for Shamrock Shake Day because I'm sure he's got that all scientifically down, right?
Yeah,
And
he
everything.
knows right
All right,
off that top of his head.
all right. Well, anyway, so everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week, or at least Dwight will be back with another great edition of Dr. Politics. See you then.